Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Enjoyment. I am your host, Jay, and today we are going to be talking about none other than James Cameron. So sit back, and I hope that you enjoy listening to me talk about something that I enjoy in the background of you doing something you enjoy. So let's jump right into it.
The Oscar goes to James Cameron for Titanic.
This is James Cameron's second Academy Award, having picked up tonight's Oscar for Best Editing. Mr. Cameron has written and or directed 9 films, including The Terminator and The Abyss.
I'm the king of the world!
When you hear the name James Cameron, you probably think of Avatar, as well as the Titanic, the Terminator movies, the sequel to Alien, as well as The Abyss. What you probably don't think of is nature documentaries. James Cameron has done a significant number of nature documentaries. He has been working as an ocean explorer for National Geographic for quite some time and has a deep passion for deep sea exploration. He also has a deep passion for nature conservation. Now, I am not going to focus on his blockbuster films because I could talk for hours about those. What I am going to talk about is his nature documentaries. Nature documentaries are something that I really enjoy. They're very calming. They make me so happy. And also, I find them incredibly interesting. I learn something every time I watch a new documentary. I love that they're educational. And I also love that nature documentaries are accessible for everybody. And that's something that you will find out about me, is that I love media that is accessible to every single person regardless of age. I love things that are meant for adults and children. The first thing that James Cameron did when he wanted to break into the nature documentary scene was that he directed Expedition Bismarck, which is a 2002 documentary produced by the Discovery Channel, and it follows the underwater expedition to the German battleship Bismarck, which sunk in World War II. Now, Battleship Bismarck was first discovered in 1989 by Dr. Robert Ballard, who is also known for discovering the Titanic, which is really funny that this is the first thing James Cameron did nature documentary-wise, because he has such an obsession with the Titanic and has been to the wreckage of the Titanic so many times. So I think it's kind of interesting that the first thing he did was a documentary about the battleship Bismarck. James Cameron and his crew are the only other people to visit the wreckage of the Bismarck, which is pretty awesome. That's an awesome thing to be known for. I guess he really isn't known for that, but it is just one of his many achievements in the nature world. The next thing he would do would be related to the Titanic. It is The Ghosts of the Abyss. It came out in 2003. It was produced by Walt Disney Pictures and Walden. It would be the stuff that he filmed from his 2001 expedition down to the Titanic wreckage. Along with James Cameron, he was joined by a whole team. Notably, Bill Paxton came with him. Bill Paxton was one of the main actors in the Titanic. They went 3,821 meters down into the ocean. James Cameron is noted as being the person who has taken the most amount of dives down to the Titanic wreckage. He has a crazy interest in in the Titanic wreckage and what happened to the Titanic. As you see by him making the Titanic movie, which was reportedly supposed to be one of the worst failures in film history, but ended up being one of the most successful movies in film history. To this day, people still love the Titanic movie. Now, another thing that he's done with the Titanic, which is it's a bonus feature on the Titanic documentary. You can also find it through the National Geographic, and it's called The Final Word with James Cameron. And it's pretty much him sitting around a table with some scientists, with some Titanic historians, people who know a lot about ships, and they get into heated debates about what happened to the Titanic, how it capsized. Because James Cameron has a theory that the way they say it capsized isn't how it actually capsized. James Cameron wanted to have the most accurate representation of how the Titanic might have sunk, because we are still unsure of how the Titanic went down, other than, of course, it hit the iceberg, but how the ship actually broke apart is what is debated. James Cameron has this love of the Titanic and deep sea exploration. The next thing that he would do would be one of my favorite nature documentaries that I have seen in recent years, which is Aliens of the Deep.
It is an alien world with no sunlight and temperatures far beyond boiling. It is called Earth. Join Academy Award-winning director James Cameron for a once-in-a-lifetime 3D journey, 2.5 miles straight down.
It came out in 2005. It was produced by Walden. They went about 3,000 meters down. He went down with some marine biologists on a Russian research vessel. They went down in MERS, which are deep submergence vehicles, which are only about 7 meters across. They are very tiny. These ones can fit 2 people. So you see a lot of footage of James Cameron in there with the marine biologists that he's working with. They went and explored the mid-ocean ridges in the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean. And the idea is that they wanted to go and observe life in extreme conditions. So they went down and they looked at all of these hydrothermal vents, which put off this superheated water and this sulfurous fumes, and they found all of this life living in this very intense environment, extremely hot environment, way deep down where you shouldn't be finding life. For instance, they found the species of shrimp that were living along these superheated vents. James Cameron is also really interested about Mars exploration and what human life would be like on Mars. He is interested in extraterrestrial life, which is a part of Aliens of the Deep, because they hypothesize that if we have these creatures living on Earth in these intense conditions, then it is also very possible for us to find extraterrestrial life that are also living in extreme conditions. He is talking about microscopic life, one-celled organisms, these kinds of things that maybe we will be able to find on other planets. I love Aliens of the Deep because it was one of the more educational documentaries that I had watched. They get into a lot of detail. You can tell that it was made for children, which I like. I think that children viewing this documentary, it would make them excited about protecting the life that is down in the ocean, because we don't get to see the life that's in the ocean, especially if you don't live near a coast, you don't live near the ocean, and people care more about the life that they can see. So that was a part of why they made it, is they wanted to get people feel more excited about nature conservation. Here is James Cameron talking about Aliens of the Deep, along with Dejana Figueroa, a marine biologist who worked with him during the film.
So can you tell me when you first got interested in exploration? How long has this kind of dream been simmering inside of you?
Oh, probably about the age of 6. I don't know. I mean, I certainly loved science programming and science fiction when I was a kid. I loved Jacques Cousteau and the images that he was bringing back from the ocean, which were stunning in those days, and people just hadn't seen that stuff. So I grew up with it. I grew up in the most amazing time for exploration in the 20th century, during the Gemini and Apollo programs, during the whole Man in the Sea programs that were going on in the 60s. So I've felt like in recent decades we've turned away from that. There's not as much that's happening that seems to be as exciting to the public, even though there are amazing things happening. So I wanted to communicate to the public that, yeah, we're still exploring the ocean, and yeah, there's still amazing things that have never been seen down there.
Do you hope that a movie like this will spark in the public consciousness a desire to do more and really get out there and search for more things?
Definitely. We're hoping that this, or at least I'm hoping that this is going to encourage people to get excited about our ocean, about our planet, and about elsewhere, just our surroundings, the environments that we're going to come in contact with in the next couple of years.
Something else that James Cameron is noted for, and they did a documentary about this that came out in 2014, which is the Deep Sea Challenger. James Cameron holds the record for taking a deep diving submersible down to the deepest known point on Earth, which is in the Mariana Trench. It's called the Challenger Deep. It is over 10,000 meters down. James Cameron went 10,898 meters below the ocean. Here is a clip of James Cameron talking about that expedition on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon.
James Cameron, welcome. Welcome to our show, and thank you so much for being here. You and your team have made history. You've done something historic. And what a
So
great...
it appears, like doing 100 shows.
Hey, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
May you do 10,000 more.
Thank you so much. But this thing, when you watch this, I was just mesmerized. What a great group of people you have working on this too. Yeah. Just you made your own submarine. You made your own because you want to go to the deepest part of the ocean.
Everybody acts like that's strange, but when
no one makes their own submarine.
I never get this from kids because kids say, "Well, why wouldn't you make your own submarine and go to the bottom of the ocean?"
I guess so.
They get it.
Is the Mariana Trench?
Yeah,
that is the deepest because that's where the deepest part of the ocean is.
Yeah, Mariana Trench is long. It's about 1,500 miles long, and there's a part of it called the Challenger Deep that's the deepest place on our planet.
And how deep it is?
35,800 feet, something like that. About 7 miles.
And you were there?
Yeah. I checked it out.
He did this in 2012. It was the second successful manned dive down to the Challenger Deep, which is pretty incredible that not only has James Cameron made some of the most successful blockbuster films in history, Avatar, the Titanic, the Terminator films, but he also holds this record for the Deep Sea Challenger, which I think is so remarkable and so strange because I had no idea that James Cameron was involved in that way. And so to this day, he's still doing that because during the Deep Sea Challenger, they put 3D cameras on this deep diving submersible to see how that would work. And now they're taking that technology that they tested and they're using it in the new Avatar films. There are rumors that the Avatar film that hopefully is coming out next year, parts of it are going to be filmed in the Mariana Trench, which is so bonkers to me how he is able to do that. it wouldn't be the first time that James Cameron has pioneered some kind of new film technology. For instance, the Titanic movie. That movie, if you watch the documentary, they show this. They built a 2-scale replica of the Titanic outside and inside. So it's only half of the Titanic lengthwise. The craziest thing about this huge 2-scale Titanic is that it is sinkable. They have it on some kind of contraption to where they are able to sink this huge stage. It is incredible. In more recent years, James Cameron starred in a documentary called Atlantis Rising, which was a 2017 TV movie. It was directed by Cynthia Jacovici. It is the both of them going on an adventure to evaluate the different hypotheses about Atlantis, which is pretty cool because that kind of means that James Cameron believes that Atlantis was real. I also believe that Atlantis was real, but I don't have any great working hypotheses about why. But apparently James Cameron does. So maybe that's what the new Avatar films will be about. It'll be about Atlantis or something like that. We can hope. Nature conservation-wise, here are some things that James Cameron has done or is currently doing. So during the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, which personally affected me and a lot of people that I know, James Cameron met with the officials of the EPA to discuss possible solutions and offered his assistance in stopping the oil leak. He's also a member of the NASA Advisory Council, and he worked with the space agency to build cameras for the Curiosity rover that was sent to Mars, which is pretty cool, although they launched the rover without Cameron's technology because they didn't have time to test it. James Cameron is really interested in Mars. He's been quoted as saying, "I've been very interested in the Humans to Mars movement, and I've done a tremendous amount of personal research for a novel, a miniseries, and a 3D movie." Cameron is a member of the Mars Society, which is a non-profit organization lobbying for the colonization of Mars. Some other interesting little things about James Cameron that I kind of wanted to include is that James Cameron is a Canadian citizen, but he doesn't live in Canada. He divides his time between living from California and New Zealand, where he bought more than 1,000 hectares of land in New Zealand, and he grows a wide range of fruits, nuts, vegetables, and they also run a cafe and grocery store called Forest Food Organics, which they sell organic produce from the land that they own, which is pretty wild. I kind of want to go to New Zealand now and go to that cafe, but I would have to make sure that James Cameron was there somehow. I guess I need to make a trip to New Zealand for a lot of reasons. Something else that's really interesting is that James Cameron has been really close friends with Guillermo del Toro since 1993, and in 1998, Toro's father was kidnapped, and James Cameron gave him more than $1 million in cash to pay a ransom to have Toro's father released. James Cameron has also been an executive producer on a number of nature documentaries. One that I guess is an ongoing TV series that started in 2014, which is about climate change. The storyline on IMDb says, "Climate change is one of today's most hotly debated topics, not only in America, but around the world. This series features first-hand accounts from people who have been affected by the occurrence, with a team of correspondents from the entertainment and news industries traveling around the world." So James Cameron was an executive producer on that. Also just announced he is an executive producer on a documentary that follows the Akashinga, which is a group in Zimbabwe, as well as other countries in Africa. It is an anti-poaching group. They are a part of the International Anti-Poaching Foundation. It is a all-female-led group. Here is information off of the International Anti-Poaching website. They say the operational model is Akashinga, a community-driven conservation program empowering disadvantaged women to restore and manage networks of wilderness areas in Africa. Training is conducted under the LEAD Ranger Initiative, a program of excellence building field-based indigenous leadership and instructional capacity across the global conservation industry. In delivering our programs, we incorporate 16 of the UN's 17 Sustainable Development Goals approved by the 193 member states, and these are the blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all. You can find more information about that at the International Anti-Poaching Foundation website or from National Geographic, who they are the people doing the documentary, plus they have an article from 2019 that is about the Akashinga. James Cameron has donated to a number of charities. The list is Community Inspiring Today's Youth, Earth Day Network, Global Green, Green Cross International, Oceana, Princess Grace Foundation, Thursday's Child, and Years of Living Dangerously, which is the documentary on climate change that I spoke of. I don't want this to feel like a completely uncritical look at James Cameron, because James Cameron is not a perfect person. This is to take a look at what he has worked on. James Cameron is worth $700 million, and I personally feel like although James Cameron has done quite a bit, I feel like he could be doing a lot more with the amount of money that he has. I don't think it's completely ethical to be making movies that cost millions of dollars to make. For instance, True Lies costed $100 million in 1994. The Titanic cost $200 million in 1997. Avatar cost $237 million in 2009. I have read a couple of articles about people who think James Cameron is a hypocrite, and I'm going to read something right now. It says, this is from the independentco.uk, which says, a week ago it emerged that Oscar-winning film director had put his money where his mouth is by donating $1 million of his personal fortune to opponents of Proposition 23, a ballot measure facing voters in California at the coming midterm elections, which could suspend the state's landmark law combating climate change. Supporters of the proposition weren't going to take that lying down, though. On Thursday, they returned fire by releasing a short film that claims to highlight a Titanic-sized gulf between Mr. Cameron's somewhat magisterial proclamations regarding the importance of combating climate change and his actual lifestyle. Quote, he's fighting Proposition 23 because he says we should use less fossil fuels, notes the film. But if Cameron succeeds, it will mean higher prices and job losses. It proceeds to quote a recent newspaper interview in which he discussed global warming, telling a reporter that we are going to have to live with less. The camera then cuts to aerial footage of the 3 adjacent homes that Cameron inhabits in the hills of Malibu. Although they each have heated swimming pools and together boast more than 24,000 square foot of living space, the properties have not a single energy-saving solar panel or windmill between them. He also owns a 100-acre ranch in Santa Barbara, a Jet Ranger helicopter, 3 Harleys, a Corvette, a Ducati, a Ford GT, a collection of dirt bikes, a yacht, a Humvee fire truck, and a fleet of submarines, continues the narrator, and yet he demands we live with less? James Cameron is a hypocrite. Although the film conveniently ignores the fact that Cameron pays to offset his personal carbon emissions, its aggressive tone will concern many of Hollywood's liberal elite, who preach green living while driving Porsches and clocking up the air miles in first class. In its first 2 days, the attack ad clocked up to 120,000 views on YouTube. Given that information, I'm going to leave it up to you to decide if you think James Cameron is a hypocrite or not, or if you think that he is doing what he can to help save the environment. That's going to do it for me, folks. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode of Enjoyment about James Cameron. I will catch you next time.
Oscar-winning director James Cameron has decades of experience with deep ocean technology. He recently assembled an independent team of experts to come up with ideas to end the disaster in the Gulf. James, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Morning. Thanks for having me on the show.
Obviously there's so much frustration with what is going on in the Gulf and what isn't going on in the Gulf. Your frustration really was evident in some comments you made last week. I want to play those for people, and then I want to give you a chance to explain what you were talking about. All right, take a listen.
Over the last few weeks, I've watched, as we all have, with growing sort of horror and heartache, watching what's happening in the Gulf and thinking those morons don't know what they're doing.
Who are you referring to? What did you mean by that, James? I know you thought you were misunderstood a little bit.
Well, I was talking about the BP people who were out at the scene trying to control the leak, and what I was doing is, it's a classic out of context kind of quote. I was telling a story in two parts. That's where I started, thinking they don't know what they're doing. We're watching week after week with the failures. I got into it with this team of experts, including some petrochemical engineers and some people who really know a lot about deep well control and deep drilling. And we found out that our team found out this is a very, very complex problem. There's a lot going on, 18,000 feet below the surface of the water here, 13,000 feet down a borehole. And if they don't do things exactly right, they could actually make this worse. I know it's hard to imagine, but as they like to say in this field, no situation is so bad that you can't make it worse.
When you gathered this group of people, and these are some of the best minds in the business, and you had a brainstorming session that I understand lasted more than 10 hours, did you come up with some concrete ideas in terms of things that can be done right now to make this situation not worse but better?
Yeah, absolutely. We looked at it in sort of three stages. What can we do right now to either slow down or stop the flow of oil and to capture what's escaping? Those are the first two. Then the third section was, what can this group do in terms of having ongoing value in studying the environmental impact to the underwater community and in possibly forming the basis or the framework for a national rapid response team, which we don't seem to have. I mean, we formed this as a kind of an ad hoc workshop group of some of the best minds in the deep submergence community. We formed it spontaneously 42 days after the crisis began, and so we think we need to have a permanent group that can come in on day one of a crisis and assist.
Can you share an idea? I know you're going to release a report today. Is there an idea there you'd like to see implemented as early as today or tomorrow?
Sure. The thing that people have to understand is we all look at this thing and we say, well, can't they just cap it? This is just a big plumbing problem down there, and all the days go by and we think it's still pouring out, still pouring out. The thing is that you've got these very, very high pressures way down at the bottom of the formation, about 13,000 psi by our estimation. And if you hard cap the well, you could create other problems. An underground blowout, leaks could come up in other places that are even more difficult to control. So we believe that what you need to do, our group's recommendation, is go back to the top kill type of process where you get heavy oil drilling mud down the well, build up some hydrostatic pressure. And the way we think you do this is you throttle the well at the surface. You create enough back pressure, which they didn't have before.
I know you feel that right now the only images we're seeing, and you're right about this, are coming from BP-controlled cameras. You would like to see some independent cameras down there. Is the reason for that, do you think that BP is only showing us what they want to show us?
Well, I think that right from the beginning there hasn't been a lot of transparency, and a working group such as ourselves could have used an awful lot of information from that site and better imaging. And, it's more of a philosophy. Does the government want to rely on BP or another oil company for all of its intel coming out of the site, or do they want to have their own independent capability to go in and see what's happening? We have that ability. We have submersibles, we have ROVs, we have all kinds of vehicles that could get down there. We have experienced operators. Why doesn't the government have that capability independent of relying on the oil company?
James Cameron. James, thanks for getting up early. It's always good to see you.
All right, thanks a lot.